الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله بالحق بشيرا ونذيرا وداعيا إلى الله بإذنه وسراجا منيرا صلى الله تعالى عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه وبارك وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان صدق الله العظيم وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من يضمن لي ما بين لحيي وما بين فخذي أضمن له الجنة أو كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم. Respected brothers and elders, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us a deen in which it encompasses each and every single aspect. Be it a person's ibadat when it comes to his dealings with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or a person's mu'amalat and his mu'asharat when it comes to his dealings with one another. And one of the most important things a person is told to focus on, and if you look into the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, was his dealings with people. Many people came to test the sincerity of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they came to test the truthfulness of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala based upon the character of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and how he dealt with others. So some would come in a very extreme way. They would come in a very harsh way, just to see the reaction of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the reaction of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was such that the more a person would act extreme with him and disrespectful to him, the more he would increase in mercy and in forgiveness and in tolerance. This was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? The more a person came and disrespected him, the more he had patience on this. And one of the most important thing a person is told as an ummati of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and as a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to focus on how we deal with one another and how we speak to one another. Are we winning the hearts of people? The deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a deen where you need to win the hearts of people. Not that you overpower people, not that you get more louder than the other person. If the person disrespects you, you disrespect that person more. What happens nowadays, a person says one bad word to you, we're ready to give him 10 bad words. A person does one little thing to you, you're ready to do 10 wrong things to that person. But the case with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was that if a person would do wrong, he would increase in his forbearance, and he would increase in his patience, and he would increase in his mercy. And if we look at the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in this beautiful surah, which many of us know. If we don't know it, we have heard about it, we listen to it, we love listening to it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts off the surah by saying Ar-Rahman. He talks about the merciful quality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he talks about Allam al-Quran, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught this insan Quran, so on and so forth. And then he eventually gets to Allamahul Bayan, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught insan how to speak. And the speaking with one another is something which is very important. Right? That are you smiling to the other person? Are you winning that person's heart over? Or are you talking that every single time you open your mouth, it's like an arrow piercing the heart of the other person? It's like poison coming out of your mouth. Right? Many people you will find, they have different personalities. Depending on the side of the bed they wake up on that day, that's how their mood is. Right? So one day that person will be the best of person. And the next day, that person can become the worst in the sense of, you don't know what's going to come out of the person's mouth. You don't know how that person is going to react. One day he can have the biggest of hearts. But then the next day, he can wake up and he can say so many bad words to you that it will just break your heart. That's what Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, once he talked to Mu'adh radiyallahu anhu. And who was Mu'adh? Mu'adh radiyallahu anhu has said that on the day of judgment, he is going to be raised as the leader of the ulama of the ummah, of the scholars of the ummah. So Mu'adh radiallahu anhu will come and he will have the flag of the ulama of the ummah and he'll be leading them. Just how Hassan and Hussein rahimahumullah will be the leaders of the youngsters of the ummah. Mu'adh radiallahu anhu, it is said that he's going to be the leader of the scholars of the ummah. And at one point, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam directly told him, Ya Mu'adh, wallahi inni la uhibbuk. That, oh Mu'adh, I love you. Imagine just getting this from the words from the lips of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Imagine getting this from the lips of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That a person is told directly from the Prophet of Allah that, oh Mu'adh, I love you. Right? One is just in general. That you say, I love all of my Sahaba. I love my entire team. Right? The boss comes in and he says, man, he has a meeting with you at the end of it and he says, I love all of you guys. You guys are doing a great job. Keep it up. And everybody says that. But now imagine within that, he picks out one person and he says, Brother Yusuf, you're doing an exceptional job. Right? I have special love for you. The way you work and the way you deal with one another, the way you get your projects done. Right? I have something which, now you have been called out and you've been selected specifically. So now the feeling that you have, the rest of the people that are sitting won't have. Yeah, they'll feel happy, but that's just a general statement. Right? In that the good and bad, everybody's included. But now when the Prophet ﷺ takes your name, right? And when you are taken by your name and it's said that you are doing an exceptional job and I love you, then you feel like very happy. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam on one occasion he told Mu'adh radiallahu anhu that Ya Mu'adh, wallahi inni la uhibbuk. Oh Mu'adh, verily I love you. So this was the leader of the scholars on the Day of Judgment, and this was a person Rasulullah ﷺ had an attachment with, and he had love for. And then he told him that, let me tell you something. Ala ukhbiruka bimilaki hadha al-amr. There's a lengthy hadith where Rasulullah ﷺ talks about the importance of salah, the importance of fasting, the importance of going out and striving in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and different aspects of our deen. Then at the end of the hadith he said, Ala ukhbiruka bimilaki hadha al-amr. That should I give you the essence and what it exactly means? Should I give you the essence of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? That if you were to summarize it, how do you get the success of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, فَأَخَذَ بِلِسَانِهِ Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam grabbed his tongue and he said, control this. أَمْلِكْ هَذَا أَمْلِكْ عَلَيْكَ لِسَانَكَ. That, oh Mu'adh, control your tongue. Control the way you speak to one another. When you are attracting them to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, do it in a way when you're merciful. Do it in a way where you want them to come closer to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're not making them run away from the deen of Allah. You're not, when you open your mouth, it's like honey that's coming out and people are just attracted with you and they want to be around you. And this was the case of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And then Rasulullah told Mu'adh radiallahu anhu, he said, do you know that thing which is going to be a means of many people going into the fire of Jahannam? They're going to be dragged face first in the fire of Jahannam. So Mu'adh radiallahu anhu said, oh Rasulullah, tell me. So then the answer was given to him by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that, oh Mu'adh, people will be taken into the fire of Jahannam because of their tongues. The way they spoke to people, the way they disrespected people, the way they were doing the quality of backbiting, the way they harmed others with their tongue. One is the physical harm you do to a person. You hit the person, right? You slap the person. You get into a physical altercation. But something which is worse than that is the fact that you break the heart of a person. A father can break the heart of his child. The child can break the heart of his father. A husband can break the heart of his wife. The wife can break the heart of her husband. You can break the heart of the other musalli, of your friend, of your brother, of your co-worker. And that's something which is very hard to patch up. The moment you do that, then it will never ever be the same ever again. And it's only because of the person getting in a fit of anger and saying words which he was not supposed to say. Uttering words out of the mouth that he was not supposed to. And this is why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, you guarantee me two things, and I will guarantee Jannah for you. مَنْ يَضْمَنْ لِي مَا بَيْنَ لِحْيَيْهِ وَمَا بَيْنَ فَخِذَيْهِ أَضْمَنْ لَهُ الْجَنَّةِ. That if a person guarantees two things, that he's going to be able to control them for the rest of his life, then I, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, will stand on the Day of Judgment and guarantee paradise for this person. What was it? Was it salah? Was it fasting? No doubt they're important. We need to do those. Why did Rasulullah ﷺ mention these two things specifically? Because these are two things which a person really doesn't care for. Uses it however he wants to. He feels like whatever I can say, no one's there to touch me. I have this position, I have this authority. I'm the manager, I'm the supervisor, I'm the head of the household. I'm the husband, I'm the father, I'm the mother. I can say whatever I want. But this was not what Rasulullah ﷺ did. And he said, مَنْ يَضْمَنْ لِي مَا بَيْنَ لِحْيَيْ وَمَا بَيْنَ فَخِذَيْ أَضْمَنْ لَهُ الْجَنَّةِ. That person who can guarantee me two things, I will guarantee paradise for that person. First and foremost is, the person guarantees his private parts. He's not going to misuse those. And then the second thing, which brings us to the main thing which we're talking about, is that thing which is between our two jaws. And what is that? That is our tongue. That person who learns how to control this, the Prophet ﷺ said that person, I will guarantee paradise for that person. And it's something which is very hard. Sometimes it's justified. Even then in our deen it's told that you stay quiet. One person came to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he started swearing at him, he started saying worst of things to him. The Prophet ﷺ was standing next to him. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was quiet for a little bit. Eventually Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu responds to that person, that how dare you disrespect me, and he says something to him. The moment he says that, Rasulullah ﷺ walks away. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu realized that something happened. He said, why did Rasulullah ﷺ walk away from me? I didn't even say anything too bad. Didn't he see that this person was abusing me and he was insulting me? So then Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu ran behind the Prophet ﷺ. He said, why did you leave? He said, as you were sitting there and listening to the insults of that person and the abuse of that person, there was an angel giving response on your behalf. The moment you opened your mouth, the angel left, so I also left. Right? The deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us, and is taught to us by none other than the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, is to stay quiet. Is to take the hardships of people. If you look at the hardships that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had to go through, none of us will ever have to go through those types of hardships. And he said that if you look at all Anbiya alayhimus salatu wassalam, and the sacrifices and the hardships that they had to go through, you put them on one side, and then you look at the sacrifices and the hardships that I had to go through. He said, my hardships and my sacrifice will outweigh theirs. But even then, Rasulullah's mercy would increase. His compassion would increase. And people came into the fold of Islam because of that. The biggest enemies of Islam became the followers of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The likes of Umar radiallahu anhu, the likes of the great enemies of Islam, they came in front of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and they said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadur Rasulullah. Wahshi, who was a person who was behind the killing of the uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But even then, the dealing of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was so great that even Wahshi had no choice but to come in front of him and say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadur Rasulullah. And it wasn't because of the hardship that he showed, or the fear that he struck into the hearts of people. That was there. But it wasn't because of that. It was more because of the character that Rasulullah ﷺ held within him, and how he dealt with them. And then he told Wahshi that I forgive everything that you have done. The only thing I don't want you to do is please limit your interaction when you come in front of me, because every time I see you, I am reminded of my uncle, and it hurts me really bad. But even then, I'm happy with your Islam. Go ahead, accept Islam, and you are going to be saved on the fire of Jahannam, on the day of judgment from the fire of Jahannam. That's something which it's easy for us to talk about, but imagine that. Somebody who takes the life of your relative. Not only just any random relative, somebody you're very close to is your uncle. And he was the same age. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he passed away, it said that he never really cried with a sound. He would get sad, but he would keep it within himself and he'd control it. Never did he cry aloud. But when he came to Hamza radiallahu anhu, he said because he was so close to him that even the Sahaba radiallahu anhu, they heard the sound of the weeping and the crying of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam because of how sad he was. بكت عيني وحق لها بكاها وما يغني البكاء ولا الأويل على أسد الإله غداة قالوا أحمزة ذاكم الرجل قتيل أصيب المسلمون به جميعا هناك وقد أصيب به الرسول عليه سلام ربي في جنان يخالطها نعيم لا يزول. Hamza radiallahu anhu, Sahaba radiallahu anhu were standing around when they would see the body and the way it was mutilated, the body of Hamza radiallahu anhu. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sees this, and he hurts Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam being his nephew. So he starts crying. And Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they were very good in their poetry. That even in the hardest of times, their poetry would get even better. So, the poetry that comes out of one of the Sahabi's mouth said, "Bakat aini wa hukka laha bukaha, wa ma yughni al-buka'u wala al-awilu." He said, today, the eyes are crying, the heart is filled with sadness, and how could it not be? This crying of ours is justified. The crying of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is justified. He said, but the only issue is, it's not going to help us, it's not going to bring our brother back. It's not going to bring Hamza radiallahu anhu back. وَمَا يُغْنِ الْبُكَاءُ وَلَا الْأَوِيلُ عَلَىٰ أَسَدِ الْإِلَهِ غَدَاةَ قَالُوا أَحَمْزَةُ ذَاكُمُ الرَّجُلُ قَتِيلُ. The lion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Hamza radiallahu anhu, his nickname was Asadullah. The lion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, today his body is cut into pieces. Tomorrow people will wake up and say that the janazah of his went, and he went back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his body was mutilated. Hamzatu dhakum ar-rajulu qatilu. They won't even be able to accept it. They will ask the question, is that really Hamza radiallahu anhu? أصيب المسلمون به جميعا هناك وقد أصيب به الرسول عليه سلام ربي في جنان يخالطها نعيم لا يزول. He said today it's a calamity for each and every single one of us. Specifically it was for Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But then he consoled everybody and he said عليه سلام ربي في جنان يخالطها نعيم لا يزول. For a believer, he's always victorious. He's victorious if he's successful in this world. If he leaves this world and he pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that person is successful. He said tomorrow he's going to stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he is going to be given paradise, and every single person will wish that they were in his position. Right? So the more a person guards his tongue, you can be saying the right thing, but if your tone is wrong, if your tone is off, if your delivery is off, then rather than that, those same words having benefit, they're going to do more harm. And this is why Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told Mu'adh radiallahu anhu, who was the leader of the scholars of the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that control your tongue. We make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us all the ability to bring upon the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.